And welcome to the Go Earn It podcast. I'm your host, Shane Sparks. This is episode 1. Stevan Micic, 3-time NCAA All-American. He was a national finalist for Schomburg Met at Michigan in 2018. He's a Big Ten champion, and now you can add world champion to the resume. Stevan, it's crazy to think I met you about 10 years ago, but here we are. It's always great to see you. You're looking good. How you been?
Thank you, Shane. Yeah, thank you for having me. I've been awesome, doing really well right now, getting back into the swing of things with my training and everything, and couldn't be happier. And couldn't be hungrier even going into Paris next year. So I'm excited with everything going on. So thank you again.
In lining up this interview, your email has underduck in the email. What's the story with that?
Yeah, duck under 44 is my email, and I don't know, duck under has like always been my move as a kid. I mean, now I don't really hit it as much anymore because it's a hard move. Like it's a hard move to hit at the highest level, but still my favorite move because it's, the setup, it looks slick, and I don't know, I haven't changed it. I had my Michigan email, but then like once I graduated, they they kick you out of that one. So like now I'm just back to my duck under email.
What's the first wrestling memory you have?
I think my first memory was actually going to practice. So I went to my kids club, local club called Rick Larson Wrestling Club, right? And it's a very in Northwest Indiana in the Chicago land area. It's a very, it has a lot of meaning to it, a lot of because of the amount of good wrestlers that have like started in that program. Not only myself, but Andrew Howe wrestled there as well. Went to the same school as me. John Morrison went there. The Petrov brothers, George, John, and Paul Petrov wrestled from there. Eric McGill, who went to Cornell. We had a lot of really strong wrestlers. Drew Hughes and Jake Tucker, who went to Michigan State, also were Rick Larson as well. We had a lot of really good wrestlers. Like that, it's a theater program, So I remember going there and like just showing up to practice for the first time, and I always loved the sport, so it was something that I just kind of had a feeling for, and I don't know why I chose that over any other sport, which is kind of crazy. I had opportunities like with golfing and soccer and things like that, and I just was like, no, I want to keep wrestling. So it's almost like it was a call, call from God. That's what I would say.
Doing research for Big Ten duels, everybody's got multiple state champions. You start digging through this stuff and you find out some pretty interesting nuggets. So you're a 3-time state champ. Correct me if I'm wrong, undefeated those final 3 years, third as a freshman. Who are some of those studs that you wrestled in high school? And what's your most memorable state championship match or that year that you took third? What do you remember?
Winning state was pretty cool. My sophomore year was probably most memorable because I had beaten a kid named Nathan Boston who, my freshman year I had lost to him. It was a really close match, but he was undefeated that year. And then I think he ended up moving to Kentucky. He was 199-1 after that. So I was his only loss. So that was a really good win for me, especially winning my first state title. But honestly, the biggest thing that stuck out to me in high school was my freshman year. That year was pivotal with me making improvements to that, post that season and going into my sophomore year. Because one of my friends, Josh Fuqua, he wrestled at Crown Point, and I lost 5 times in high school, 4 of which were to the same person, Josh Fuqua. So freshman year, we were not friends really. I did not like him. It was one of those guys where I had beaten him in practice and stuff like that. And he just was he was a gamer, one of those kids who just, was frustrating. He always wrestled, kind of played the edge, made it hard to take down, did the work on top and bottom. Just, I couldn't get him. He beat me it kind of off of a referee discretion call. Second match, similar thing had happened. And then after that, I was like, man, I just can't beat this guy, right? So my mental was in a really bad place. I actually remember my freshman year going into that match with Nathan Boston in my semis, and I was winning the match. And I remember hearing Josh Fuqua's name called, that he had upset the senior at 103 that was the number 1 seed in state. He was losing by 8 points, and he pinned him, and the crowd went wild. Josh Fuqua was in the finals. And I think I shut down just subconsciously that I didn't want to wrestle him and lose to him in the semis. And I ended up losing to Nathan Boston in the semis, which is crazy to think. Why wouldn't you want to get second? It was just my mental was in a bad spot with but from that point, I had a really good support group with my kids coach or growing up in high school, I worked with Alex Sertis a lot, who had a lot of, he wrestled at Iowa, and he didn't have the career that he wanted to have, being an undefeated 4-time state champ, going into Iowa, only All-American once at 7th place, was probably one of the most gifted wrestlers I've ever watched wrestle, to only get 7th. He helped his brother win a national title at Northwestern, and helping me, being there to help me get over that hump to where I had gone into that. After that year, we worked a lot, and that summer I ended up winning Fargo, then winning state the next year as well. So I feel like that those 4 losses were pivotal in my mental development and being able to get over that just after that.
See, right now, Stevan, I'm ticked off at myself that I never told that story during a Big Ten Network broadcast or at any point.
Really?
And so I love these interviews because you learn stuff that you had no idea. But I'm always intrigued by guys' high school journeys for whatever reason, because there's all these great
stories. They're the best. Yeah, they're the best. I mean, not just mine, but I love. It's hard to when you ask questions at like people that are at the highest level, and the lines are so pivotal. It might not be your mental, it might be your technique, it might be your physical, it might just decision making. Right? It can make the line. But once you've like developed as a wrestler, you pretty much are that wrestler for the most part. But when you're in high school, there's so much growth that happens to be where you can be the best youth wrestler, and all of a sudden you can nod them out, or you might not even be on the map until your senior year of high school, and all of a sudden you're a national champ or so in the next 2 years in college. It's just that pivotal growth time in high school. I love that as well. Honestly, it's cool to hear.
To think about the mental side as a 14, 15-year-old kid, what was most pivotal in developing your mindset at that time in your life?
Developing my mindset, I don't know. I've always been one to, if I put my mental like security and just belief in my preparation. So I was always one to know if I'm prepared and I'm trained right, that I would be okay. So knowing like, hey, I'm I guess just like whenever I would train in high school, the amount of knowing, like thinking back on the stuff that I had done, the reps that I put in, the amount of wrestling that I'm doing, just like that, I don't have to second guess myself when I'm out there at all. I think that's really what changed things for me, and I kind of was able to go that year from like being nervous about like opponents, right? Before in high school, when you're in the youth level, oh, this guy is so-and-so, he won this tournament, or this guy who's so-and-so won this tournament. And that doesn't matter at all. It's just like something that you build up in your head, and then you go to face it. It's a little bit scary at first. And so I think getting over that and then making that not a big deal anymore, knocking that out of the way. That was those were like the little gains and things like that as you get better, just learning how to compete and make sure that that's okay. So
awesome. So you come out of high school and you go to Northwestern before you go to Michigan. What was behind that decision? And I mean, I've never talked to you about that journey.
That was a real short, just like a thing. Well, Northwestern was it's the close school for me, right? It's like the home. It's close. It's an hour away from home. It's in the city. I could get home and back in a day, in an hour. If I want to be home and go home that night and come back, right? I'm really close with my family, but also not just that. We had like the #1 recruiting class of commits that year. And also, like I said, my relationship with the Sertis family, with Jason being there as well, and just being a national champ, it was kind of like a lot of things that looked really good on paper, but, I just wasn't really happy with myself. And I obviously, Jason didn't even end up staying there. So it was sort of like a situation that, we thought a lot of good things were going to come from it, and it just didn't feel right. I don't think also I fit in well with the school system either. I had already come from a small school. I was kind of like looking for that, where grades were important to me, but it wasn't like the main thing. And I always felt at Northwestern, like school was the priority versus my wrestling. And so, ended up transferring, and I chose Michigan. And that felt the better fit because it was, where Michigan's known for being one of the best public schools in the country, but the balance of athletics and academics were there. And I think, I enjoyed my college experience a lot. Like I loved Michigan, just my friends that I gained from it, just it's still close. I was 3 hours away, but I was able to just be in my own place. It was more of the Big Ten school, it felt like. like Northwestern's a very city school still, even though you're in Evanston. It's very like, doesn't feel like the other Big Ten schools, at least for me. That's my opinion. It was just, I love Chicago. It's my favorite city, but it was just Michigan would fit me for college. So
What was the best thing about wrestling for Coach Bormet?
all for Sean. I don't know. I've known Sean since I was really little too, being from the, the Chicago area and him running overtime and stuff. He coached Andrew and the Petrov brothers as well in their high school. I think like Sean always, I think like our relationship, we were always like really close to like, I could say bring up my complaints or questions to him or things that I was frustrated with on the mat. And we could just sit down and just talk about it and figure it out and get things going right away. So our trust in each other as a coach and just like what you want to have as a leader as a wrestling program. I don't think anyone does it better than Sean in that aspect. I mean, he's a true leader. He's he always would say like me, Miles, all these guys from Michigan are like definition of Michigan man. But I think Sean is the definition of a Michigan man, like for being a coach as the coach role. I mean, it doesn't get more professional than that. Like he honors all of the, he ticks all of the boxes that you want leading that program, and not just as a coach, but just it's just kind of, culminating the program and growing that program there. So I loved every minute of it.
What was most rewarding winning a Big Ten title?
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things that I always can, have is being a Big Ten champ. I don't know. It was just, we were just saying it was a lot longer ago than we thought. It was 5 years ago, right? You can't believe that. But I don't know. I think doing it for the school, obviously it felt good, and being how difficult the Big Tens are, like it feels like a mini nationals. It was just, I loved every minute of that. And it's tough that being able to stay composed after a really tough season going into Big Tens and then having nationals the week later, you have to still bring your best, even though that's not the tournament you're peaking for. So that's why I like the Big Ten is got that over any other tournament, I think. So having that in it means a lot to win that tournament.
Who are the guys in the Big Ten that gave you the most trouble? I mean, who are some of the guys, and maybe you remember a specific battle or two, or you just remember, I know there were a lot of them.
I don't know. Me and Luke Pletcher wrestled so many times in college. That was a pretty crazy, I think most people would remember that the most. The amount of times that because we wrestled so much. I mean, the one year, that 2018 year, we wrestled like, I think 4 times. And then the year after that, we wrestled twice. So it was like, that's a lot, 6 times in a year, 4 or 5 times in 3 months is like way too much to even ask for. And then, he was just one that you had to bring everything, because it would be like, oh, if you get a takedown, or you can't really coast on it because he could pull something out. And now all of a sudden, he did all the work, and, that was probably the most I would say. Tomasello as well. I used to, battle with him back in the day, like my freshman year. I don't know, but those years are crazy. I don't know like which guys. I mean, people probably bring up DeSanto as well, even though we only wrestled once when he was at Iowa instead of Drexel. But yeah, those were crazy matches too. So, no one can forget the cartwheel Kimura armbar.
Sure. That was actually on my mat at the national tournament that year, and I was
really?
I mean, I didn't really know what to say. I mean, it was just kind of like not good, clearly not good.
Well, I just did a camp actually like a couple weeks ago, and someone's they wanted a picture with me. They're like, they came out, in San Diego, and they just go, all right, 1, 2, 3, cartwheel Kimura, and they took a picture like that. I'm like, how do you remember that? And I'm like, the impact of that was I would say that like it doesn't matter to me. It wasn't something like great. It was more for him doing that, but it's like one of the most memorable NCAA moments I feel like in recent history. Just that, how crazy, and just was like, people were like, what was that? What just happened?
I have a son. He just turned 20 yesterday. He's not a big wrestling fan, but he pays attention to it, and he's become more of a wrestling fan. He sent me within the last month he sends me a message of that match and goes, Dad, you're the guy calling this match. I'm like, yeah, I remember that one well. And it's a long time ago. So that definitely is one of those matches. 2018, you make the NCAA finals against Seth Gross from South Dakota State. What do you remember, Stevan, in your, I always like going back to the preparation, the mindset. What do you remember heading into that final on that Saturday night?
I go heading into it. I was pretty confident. I was prepared very well. The match just didn't go the way that I wanted it to. It was like I felt that maybe 99% of the stuff I was ready for, but the way that it happened, where he was able to just go from the takedown to catch a near arm and turn and hold, where Seth was really good on top, was probably the only way that he would have been able to beat me. I thought, because the way that it ended up going was I ended up scoring 4 or 5 takedowns. It was 5 takedowns to 1. You're like, how do you lose a match like that? Well, the way that the situation went down, and Seth is good in his ballpark. He's good in his toolbox. So it was kind of like he did what he had to do, capitalized, and it was just sort of like, how did that happen? I remember people coming and congratulating me after that match, like I had won, because they had forgotten. They're like, oh yeah, because they just saw me doing like a takedown clinic on him at the end, trying to catch points, and it was just like, it was frustrating. But yeah, what can you do? But I was ready for the match. I was. There was nothing more that I put into. I was prepared. I was feeling good. I had an awesome run from New Year's till the NCAA tournament.
Are you a short-term memory guy, or that loss stick with you for a while?
I would say that stuck with me. Being an NCAA finalist is a huge accomplishment in itself. But like, what bothered me was like knowing, I think more than like maybe the difficult, the highest, the level of wrestling with college, but like just knowing how hard it is to repeat and make an NCAA finals again that's what bothered me, was like knowing all the struggle that I had to go through the entire season. Maybe not just the NCAA tournament, but like going through the tournament, trying to stay healthy, wrestling a lot of tough competition back to back to back, all that kind of stuff going in. I just was like, oh man, like in my head, I was like, I got to go through that again and try to make the finals again to win it again. That was what was really tough. I think that ate me up a little bit, because then what ended up happening was the next year I was probably even I felt a much better wrestler, but then I ended up tearing my MCL, and at like the worst time possible, like 4 or 5 weeks before the tournament, and I kind of had to force and wrestle through an injury, and I ended up getting third and gave up 1 takedown all year. So it was like that's kind of what I was dreading a little bit, like knowing that those possibilities can happen again, and you can't take those moments for granted, pretty much.
And that's why, Stevan, you bring up a really good point. I've always said this. I know by definition it's not accurate, but I've always said to win an NCAA championship, you could say it's impossible to win it. And again, by definition, that's not 100% accurate, but it's so difficult. Like, you can say it's impossible, and to me, it's close enough. It's so difficult because you said it. So many things have to go right. One little thing goes wrong. And I oftentimes, Stevan, think that guys that have won, like using Aaron Brooks or Carter Starachi as an example this year, they've won 3, they're going for 4. Like, oh, they'll win their 4th. I think it's such a disservice to just assume anybody's going to win an NCAA title. You don't buy these things at the grocery store. They're so hard to win. So hard to win. You'll always bet against the guy, right? You'll always take the field over picking a guy. I don't care who it is.
Yeah, it's the NCAAs is, you cannot take it for granted at all, because it's not just the tournament. The tournament is just like, the ending result. And it's like, I'm not honestly the biggest fan of how the season goes. It's exciting, like, because I like from a fan, it's cool. Like you love like, oh, you got your conference season, right? And then you got your Big Tens and then your tournament. But as a wrestler, it's like very hard to maintain that kind of level of, of finding your groove to then peaking at the right time while wrestling the toughest competition week in and week out, and then being the best you can be after you just wrestled the tournament like the Big Tens. I'm not saying, obviously other conferences are different, but as I'm saying, as from a Big Ten view. So that's another thing why, like, you have to, there are so many things that you have to make sure you're doing on a daily basis to hope, like, that you can come out healthy, that you can come out improving, that you can come out the best you can, making these adjustments when, like, you can't take a guy that you beat in the Big Tens that you might have again in the NCAA quarterfinals or the semifinals. You don't think he has a game plan to wrestle you, especially in a folk style match where, you put in top and bottom into the equation and riding time. I mean, things can get crazy, right?
Absolutely.
It come down
It's
to
so
one
hard to
takedown.
win.
It's so hard to it really is. That's why I always say it's not like people are like, oh, to be an NCAA champion, like it's not just the tournament though. That's the thing. It's everything else with it, that comes with it. It's not like that's what makes it so different than I would say like the world championships or the European championships where you have, you're preparing for that tournament and you kind of maybe pick a tournament or two to kind of just check yourself, get some, iron some things out. You're your absolute best at that tournament, or like at least can be. You get your weight cutting goal. No, you're making weight every single week in the college season, and you've got these tough guys every week, and you might have to wrestle that same guy you wrestled 2 weeks ago again one more time. It's hard. Where it's some tough circumstances. But hey, for a wrestling fan, it can't get much better than that, right?
The World Championships in Serbia, you won a world title. I wanted to ask you this, and you and I talked offline a little bit about this. Did you really, because it's so difficult, you got to have that self-belief heading into these World Championships. Did you really, really, really deep down think you were going to win? Honestly.
I did. But like, no, I did believe it. Here's the thing though. You do all this preparation. This is where I think a lot of people don't see the same thing, or like maybe they do, but they don't realize it. I believe that going in, I visualized, I prepared. We were ready for every single best guy that I could have wrestled. Like we had broken film. We had been ready to wrestle these guys. Like, but then when it's time to go, feeling the nerves, not feeling your best with, getting the weight down, like all these little things kind of can creep in your head and make you forget about all that preparation that you do to make you have those doubts when it comes time, when you actually are there and you're in that moment. And you have to just remember, like, what you actually believe. So this year, different than what I did last year when I was bronze, or in the previous years where I've come close to medaling, or, I think the thing that I was able to do was just really, push the barriers away and be like, hey, I'm the guy, I can do it. I just have to, I'm believing, and I'm going to fight through everything possible. It's not going to be easy, no matter what. Like, I can beat these guys when I'm not feeling my best. Like, I'm not going to feel my best when I'm going to get these guys, because in your head, you've thought your whole time while you're feeling good, while you're, having these good training sessions, like, oh, I'm going to be the best, and like, I'm going to win this thing. And then all of a sudden you don't feel your best and you're like, oh crap, like, how am I going to do this now? So that's like, I think the main thing was like putting all that stuff away and just being like, I'm just going to be the toughest guy. Like, I'm going to be so tough because this is what I've wanted my whole life. This is what I've asked for. And so I was kind of able to get myself in that mindset this year, compared to even last year, where last year I was a little bit, I don't want to say I wrestled on eggshells, but I was definitely, last year I was a lot more timid with my wrestling than this year, where I doubted some of the things that I was doing. I stayed smart, but I didn't really, extend myself to where, like, in my semifinals, I lost to the Russian competing for Albania, where this year I felt that I wrestled a much better match. I wrestled just in general. I was just more aggressive, and I let things just happen. I wasn't second thinking anything. So I do believe that I was the best. I did believe that I was going to win it. It was just, but the night before I looked at my draw and I saw that I had, Uguyev, who's the Olympic champion, 2-time world champs, in the quarters. In the semis, I would have Abakarov, the guy who won last year at my weight that I lost to. And the finals, that would be Higuchi from Japan, who was the last year's champion at the weight above me. So I was like, oh boy, like, I just had to stay kind of composed and just not worry about it that much. Just go match for match.
Man,
it was tough.
To go through the gauntlet like that in that Serbian singlet in Serbia.
Yeah.
Can you put into words what it was like getting your arm raised as a world champion?
Yeah, that was honestly mind blowing, because I think my endorphins were just like, I was so locked in on the match that when it had been done, it was like, I just remember like visualizing this moment and then like being like, how can I this is real stuff on, like, take it in, come on, like, I had to like it. I didn't like believe it for like a minute, because I was like, I believed it, but this was like the real thing. And it was like, how many times are you going to believe something till it actually happens, sort of thing. And then it actually happened. It was like, I just like take it in and just like, this is my moment.
What were
So
you thinking about on the podium as they were playing the national anthem?
yeah, that's what really got me. I almost started tearing up, because first of all, that's something I had visualized doing and just believing it. That second thing was, being Serbian. Obviously, I'm very proud of it being American as well. But doing it for Serbia, it was something cool, because something in about my heritage and my blood and where I come from, goes a long way, because that's growing up my whole life. And it's hard to it's hard to explain, but my heritage means so much to me, and it means a lot to the Serbian people, especially in sport. Like, doing this for Serbia, I mean, even a lot of the Serbs, like most of the Serbs living here, are just it's a different thing. It's just my it just feels right, and it was just something that, like, it kind of just got to me. It got to me a little bit.
What was it like seeing your dad for the first time after winning that world title? What was that exchange like?
Yeah, that one was the best, because he had been there for me this whole time, ever since I was a kid. He's sacrificed so much to get me to the point of, being there to being the best wrestler I can be, but also pushing me to reach it. And I asked for it every time. It wasn't like, it's hard to distinguish, like, oh, my dad, and yeah, like, he's crazy a little bit. There's that difference of, like, crazy dad, like, he's not, like, because he knows what he's talking about. I believe what he's telling me. He's very knowledgeable, and like, so many people respect, so many high level wrestlers respect his opinion and thoughts, because how much time he spends breaking down film, studying wrestling, and he's a student of the sport. So, not many people can say that they're that just because they're a dad of somebody as kid. And, I've loved what he does for me. And so, the amount of work we put in preparing this summer, or ever since, even before that, but just, the work that we put in preparing for this tournament, it just was like, I couldn't have asked for it to be any better. And also, going off of the Serbian thing, it was pretty cool. Like, also, like, that we were able to, I get some love from Novak Djokovic as well. He was able to put me on his Instagram story, and like, so you can see that's how much, like, sport and winning for your heritage means. Like, I just think that was so cool. I was like starstruck, because that's like my sport idol.
Yeah, he is phenomenal. Definitely. I mean, I'd argue he's the GOAT right now for sure.
He's the GOAT. Yeah, he is.
Couple more quick questions for you. I could talk to you forever.
Yeah.
Want to talk about balance?
Yeah.
Do you have any balance, or what is your take on balance when you are trying to achieve greatness?
Oh yeah. So balance, you have to have balance. But it's like, it's different. Like, balance can't be, that's a great question. And I have so much I want to say about that. I'm just trying to figure out how I can put it together. But, like, as an athlete, right? Like I said, you want to be the best that you can be. You want to be your absolute best at the World Championships, at the Olympics. You want to be your best, but you can't always be training all out. You can't just be like, hey, I come, like, for example, I come back after winning gold. After a week and a half, I'm feeling like, hey, like, do I want to get back on the mat again and start training? I do. I have that itch because I love wrestling and I want to get better. And, like, okay, there's something in my head saying, like, hey, like, maybe you should get back on the mat. But I know deep down, like, hey, I got to take off. So I took 3 weeks off, because I knew, hey, there's no rush. Nothing that I've done, like, I'm not missing getting better or anything from weeks. When you reach the pinnacle of your sport, you could people take years off. They know how to wrestle. Like, I've gained this skill that I can acquire. Now from there, we have to improve the small little habits of doing things right and wrong. So, like, that's, like, there's a balance in your training, right? You have to know when to push hard, when to take off, when to focus on your technique, when to focus on, all out live goes and, conditioning, and you're lifting when you need to start tapering, right? You can't be always pushing hard. So balance is important. And then also with that being said, when it's not just speaking specifically on wrestling, when you're off the mat, like, okay, does that mean like I can go out and have fun, like, on the weekends? Yeah, I can. Not right now. I'm definitely can. But like, when do I need to be able to start? I have to make sure I maintain and still have a good balance of sleep. My diet needs to still be good. Like, just because I'm not cutting weight, I only make weight once a year, doesn't mean that I'm out like going crazy eating a bunch of foods. I'm just not like, portioning. I still like to eat good, healthy and feel good, in general. So, balance, I just try to stay balanced, well-rounded, throughout my life in general with all the things that I do. But when it's time to, get down and sacrifice, you have to, there's a time once it's like, okay, once my Thanksgiving's up, like once Thanksgiving's over, it's going to be pretty much lockdown mode now from then on. You know what I mean? Even though I'm getting back on the mat now, it's there's a part in my training where, yeah, we're breaking things down. We're focusing on, opponents, things we did wrong, things we need to do better. Training isn't that hard right now, but like I can enjoy some things on the weekends, go out and, meet some friends, do things that I wasn't able to do before, but, or when I'm training. But it's like, once things lock down, it's lockdown time. It's not, it's serious. So, but you have to have those things in life though. You can't, if I'm focused all year round, things are going to get a lot harder for me. And I'm one of those people, I'm a happy guy. I like to enjoy my free time. I like to not think about wrestling when I'm, certain things. And when it's time for that, like it's, that's part of doing it. Like I have to do that for my own sake, to be sane in the head. Right.
Absolutely. And what, before I let you go, Stevan, you are running the club in Chicago, correct?
Yeah, so Chicago Galaxy, I'll just tell you about that briefly. So after I graduated from Michigan, I came back here to train with my dad full time with my freestyle. And we started like I'm lucky to have a lot of really good training resources and partners in the Chicago area, either graduated or I have some foreign guys that are here working and they're still wrestling that are like Asian medalist, Eurasian champ, whatever it is. I've got a good situation. So after I had won bronze last year, we decided, hey, like, why don't we start doing a training, something that can help raise me money. But not only that, we can build this into an RTC basically, but we're not attached to college, because my love has been freestyle my whole life. I wish that freestyle was college wrestling, because college wrestling.
Stop.
I know. I love freestyle. No, but at the end of the day, I think college wrestling will always be popular, whether it's folk style or freestyle. It's college wrestling that really's got that fan base. So that's sure. I love college wrestling is important to me. I'm just saying, whether the style, I do love folk style. I'm just saying freestyle, it's just hard to fathom that, it's not the same thing that we're doing at the highest level, and I want to see US do the best in freestyle. I mean, there already are. So
you're telling me that you'll take a slick takedown in freestyle over a good, hard, gritty mat return? Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, all day. Until mat returns are rewarded with some points. Yes. until mat returns are rewarded with points. Yes. But yeah, or push outs involved. So anyways, yeah, I don't know. I just, anyways, back to the thing. We're basically trying to build this up in Chicago to have this RTC without having that tie to college, so we can focus more on that aspect of training for guys who want to reach that pinnacle in freestyle. And I know like right now it's kind of in the basement, but we're growing, and we have some really cool things involved, and that part being not attached to college we have a lot of really cool options that we can, with different paths we can go down, and I'm excited to see where we're going to go in the future.
Well, that's awesome. Stevan, thank you so much for joining me here on the Go Earn It podcast.
Thank you so much,
getting inside your mind a little bit. I just love watching the success that you're having. You're a good guy. And wish you the best, and let's do this more often. But thank you so much. It was great catching up.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much.
Talk soon.